Hello everyone, I'm Ella from yarnworksbyella, and today I'm going to be showing you how to crochet a plushie. So here I have one of my favorite yarns to crochet with. It's Premier Parfait Chunky, and you can find this on the Premier Yarns website. I have a crochet hook. This is a size I9 5.5 millimeter. So on the yarn label here, let's see, where is it? It says to use an 8 millimeter crochet hook, but I found that this yarn is a little bit thinner than the yarn type that they say it is. They say it's a size 6, but I think it's more like a size 5, or it's more similar to the size 5 yarns that I've used. And so that's why I use a smaller hook, because I use this hook for smaller yarn. I also have some stuffing and some eyes that I stole from one of my kits that I'm making. So whether you're watching this video to learn how to crochet plushie, or if you're here from one of my kit tutorials and you need help, this is the video for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So with this yarn, I'm just going to pull it from the middle, and if you have a kit, this will be all wound up for you. And I'm just going to make a ball to kind of show you how to do it. So with this yarn, this is a chenille yarn, and so it's really fuzzy. The way it's made is there's like 2 strands of thread, and there's like this fluffy stuff on the outside. You can kind of see in my hand. So I'm just going to put that to the side. But there's these 2 strings on the inside. And so one technique that I've seen, if you don't want the yarn to come out, because if you just pull on it, it will come out quite a bit. And you could do that for the entire skein. Obviously you don't want to do that. So if you want to guarantee or make it easier for you to crochet with, what you can do is you can pull off some more yarn until you have about like an inch or 2. I'll try it with this much. So we're going to separate the 2 sides, and what you're going to do is you're just going to tie a knot with them, and this will just allow the fluffy stuff of the yarn to just stay in its place and to not bother you as much. So that's what I'm going to do. And you don't have to do this. I mean, honestly, I don't do this most of the time, but if you're worried about that, then you can totally go ahead and do that. So I'm just making a double knot. So I did my first loop, and then I'm going to do my second one. And again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. This is kind of just like an extra step. But yeah, I usually don't normally do this, but I'm just showing you in case you want. Okay, so now that I've tied it, there'll still be a few little chunks that you can pull off, but it's not going to be as drastic as before. I can't pull off like big chunks of it anymore. Okay, so from here I'm just going to grab my scissors, and I'm just going to cut that extra thread. Just leave a little bit of space for it. Okay, just put that to the side. Alright, I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way. So another tool that I have here is a stitch marker. This is a locking stitch marker, and so what you do is, we'll see later, but you can put this more pokey part in a stitch and you can close it. So with making a plushie or amigurumi, we're working in a circle, and so this stitch marker will tell us where the beginning of a row is. Alright, so to get started, there's 2 ways that you can start. There's a harder way, which I know a lot of people have trouble with, and then there's, in my opinion, the better way, but really either one you want to do is just fine. So I'm going to show you the way I prefer first, and then if you don't like that, then I'll show you the second method. Alright, so the first method is called either a magic circle or a magic ring, and this does mess up a lot of crocheters, so if you are totally lost of this, just go ahead and skip to the next part of the video while I'll show you the second option. So this is the way I make it, so this might be a little bit different than you've seen if you do know how to make a magic circle. Okay, so what I do is I grab my yarn like this and I just make a loop like that. So the one on top will be the one coming from the yarn. So the one coming from the yarn is called the working yarn, and then the other side is the tail yarn. So this is where your tail is. So now that we have this little loop, I like to put my crochet hook inside the loop, and then from there you also have to pinch this to make sure it doesn't come undone. And I like to wrap the yarn around my fingers, so I wrap it around my pinky, and then I come up and wrap it around my finger, like that. Okay, so now we're going to grab the yarn. So from here, from the working yarn, I'm going to go under and grab the yarn and pull it through this loop we have on here. So I'm just going to pull it through like that. And so this is what we should have. And then from here, I'm going to do that one more time to secure it. So again, we're going to go under this strand of yarn right here. We're just going to go under and then pull it through one loop like that. And then there we go. It's secured. So why it's called a magic circle is because you can pull on this tail. It's a little hard with this yarn because it does pull, but basically what you can do is you can pull this yarn a little bit and it makes the hole smaller. So you don't want to pull it very tight because we're going to crochet into that hole, so don't make it very tight. But from here, we're going to crochet into here. So you can see our hole here. So I'm just going to stick my hook through there, so through the hole. And what I'm going to do, so how we grab our yarn is you just go under this strand and just kind of like wrap it on top, and then you're going to grab it and pull it through the hole, and then you should have two loops for your hook. So you're not going to pull it through this first one like we did before, because that's called a chain. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do what's called a single crochet. So yeah, you go through the circle, grab a loop. So now that you have two, you're going to go again and wrap your yarn, and then you're going to pull it through both of those stitches right there. And then you can kind of pull it to make it a little bit tighter. And then we have one stitch in the circle. And to make the ball that I'm going to make, I'd recommend this before making a plushie. Or this is the same way that you can make a plushie. Like if you're watching this video and you're making one of my kits, this is the same way you start the plushies. So you can just follow along with me. So we're going to put 6 stitches in here. So right now we have 1. So again, you just put your hook through the circle like this, and make sure that you have both of these pieces here. So from the tail and the actual circle itself. So you go through the hole and you grab a piece of yarn and pull it up so you have 2 loops on your hook. And then from here you grab another loop and you pull it through 2 loops on your hook. And then again you can pull it to make it a little bit tighter. And this yarn is slightly hard to tell how many stitches you have, so just trying to remember how many you have. So right now I have 2, and you can also count up here how many stitches there are, because there's like a little loop for each stitch. So again, I'm just going to make another stitch. So I'm going to go in the hole, wrap around, pull through the hole or the circle, and then yarn over and pull through 2 of those stitches. Okay, now from here, this is usually the point where I like to close up my circle, and we are going to put 3 more stitches in there, so just leave a little bit of a smaller hole. So what you do is I grab the yarn with my left hand. Here, I'll unwind it from my hand. So you grab the tail with your left hand, and then if you want, you can take your hook out, but I like to hold it so it doesn't stop me. So I'm going to hold this stitch here and hold the yarn, and you're just going to pull. And you can see that it shrunk the hole a lot, so I'm just going to leave it like this until the end of the row, and then I'm going to close it all the way. So from here you just do the same thing that we've been doing, and we're crocheting a circle. So at the end, your last stitch should be about here, so that you can connect it with the end of, or the beginning of your first stitch. So we're just going to go into our circle, yarn over, pull up, then yarn over and pull through 2. Alright, so now we have 4 stitches, so I'm just going to make 2 more. So we'll put our hook through the circle, yarn over, pull through the circle, then yarn over and pull through both of them. Alright, so you need to pull some more yarn. Okay, so now I'm going to count how many stitches I have, and this might be a little hard to see on camera or even if you're following along with me, but just do your best. It's not the end of the world if you have the wrong stitch count. I mean, your plushie or whatever you're making might turn a little different, but it's not the end of the world, just as long as you're happy with it. So I'm just going to go through and count my stitches. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you might think that, let's see, right here is a stitch, but that's actually our first little chain that we made. So that's not technically a stitch. So just the ones that are on top here. Alright, so I have 5 stitches, so that means I need 1 more for a total of 6. And it's pretty standard for most plushies that you start out with 6 stitches in your magic circle. Some patterns might have like 8 or 10, depends on how many stitches you have in there. I know for some of my patterns, if I want it to have like a pointy end, I usually have 4. Alright, so for that second method to start your plushie, I'll show you real quick. So the second method is making a chain. So how you make a chain is you need to make a slip knot first. And this is how I make a slip knot. If you have a different way you want to make a slip knot, you can totally do that. And if you want to tie off your yarn like how I did for the first method, you can do that too. I'm not going to do that for this one just because I'm going to undo this after, because I used the other method to make the plushie. But I'll show you how to make a slip knot. So what I do is I have the yarn in my right hand like this, where the tail is here and the working yarn is in the right side. And I put it in my hands like this. So my index finger is in between the two, and then my thumb is holding the tail and my middle finger is holding the working yarn. So from here I put my thumb and my index finger for my right hand in between the loop, and what I do is I twist my left hand like this. And then from there, with these 2 fingers, you can grab the yarn here and pull it up. And how you know that you did this right is if you hold the tail and you pull on this side and the yarn comes up through this little knot here and makes it bigger. And then vice versa, you can pull the tail, or you can pull the working yarn and the hole will get smaller. So from here to start a plushie, you'd put your hook inside the loop and you'd pull it tight. Not too tight that you can't work in it, but just tight enough. And then from here you'd do a chain of 2. So a chain, I did that kind of quickly, but a chain is where you go under your yarn and pull it over your loop, so it comes from like the back to the front, and it's just over the top, and then you pull it through the loop that's already on your hook, like that. So that's 1 chain. Then we're going to do that 1 more time. So you'll go under and pull the yarn from your hook through this loop that's already on your hook, like that. So when you're chaining, you're basically just replacing the loop that's already on your needle with a new one, so that if you're making something like that's flat, you would just keep chaining like this. But to make a plushie, what you do is you have the 2 stitches here, and what you're going to do is you're going to work all 6 stitches to start the circle, like here in the first chain. So what you do is you just put your needle into the loop right here, and then you yarn over. So yarning over is just when you put your yarn over your hook from the right to the left like this, and then you pull it through that chain, so you have 2 loops on your hook. So that we're doing a single crochet, so for a chain you would pull through this loop with this one, but what we're going to do instead is yarn over again and pull through those 2. And then from there you can just crochet in the chain, so we'd make 5 stitches, and I go over this more in the first method if you haven't already watched that, if you skip to this part. So if you want to go back and find where I am in the other method, in the other method you have like a big circle and you can pull this and it will get tighter. But the way we did it is we actually don't do it like that. So you'll just keep crocheting. So I'll do all 6 single crochets in here. So I have 3 and 4, 5 and 6, just like that. And you can kind of pull this and it will get slightly smaller, but if you made a big chain then you'll have a big hole. And if you don't like that, you can take this and you can sew up the little hole right there. Alright, so now we're going to go back to the rest of the video, and the rest of the video I used with the other method, but you can use it, sew this technique. It's the same from the second row and from then on with either method. Alright, sorry, my video stopped, but I think we're back. So I was just about to start the second row here, and what I was saying is I like to work over this tail so I can hide it. I don't have to weave it in later. But if you don't, you can just leave it kind of in the back and not worry about it. So that's what I'll do for now, so that it's easier for you to see my stitches. But if you want to try and work over it, what you do is, like when we put our hook in our stitch, you would just put that over the top and just kind of work over it. So I'll just do 1 stitch with it over. So what we do is instead of going to the circle, we're going to go into this stitch. So we're going to go into the stitch here, and you can put your yarn over if you want or leave it out. And then from here you'll grab your yarn and pull it through that stitch, and then you'll yarn over and pull through again. So I'm going to put that yarn in the back now. So for the second row in amigurumi or making a plushie, you usually put 2 stitches in every stitch. So our stitch count for the first row was 6, so we had 6 stitches in the first row, and now we're going to change that to 12, and that's what makes it bigger. So I have 1 stitch in this first stitch here, so I'm going to make another one, and just do your best to put your hook in the right spot. I'm just going to go by feel. So I'm put my hook in, yarn over, pull through 1, then yarn over, pull through 2, and then we're going to go into our next stitch, and you're just going to keep crocheting 2 stitches in every stitch. So like I said before, our first row has 6 stitches and our second row will have 12 stitches. And a pretty good rule of thumb, again this won't be for every pattern, but for a lot of patterns, if you start with 6 stitches, every increase row after that will be increased by 6 stitches. And something I didn't mention is if you put 2 stitches into 1 stitch, and if you're like basically doubling the stitch count, that's called an increase. So right here I have 1 stitch, and if I put a second stitch in there, that's an increase. So sometimes patterns will say like put 2 double crochet in a stitch, or we'll say increase. I know for my patterns I usually say to increase, and so if you ever see that, that just means that you put 2 stitches in the same stitch. Okay, so now I'm at the end of my row. I have my stitch marker right here, and if you want you can take it out. I like to keep it in though, for now, to crochet in. So you just put your hook in the same stitch. Actually I am going to pull that out. So you're just going to take it out and you're going to do the same, like 2 stitches in there. Alright, so this is the end of row 2. So we should have 12 stitches around. And then I'm just going to grab my stitch marker and put it back in my stitch right there. Okay, so for row 3, what we're going to do, so we're going to do 1 normal single crochet and then an increase in the next. So like I said, we're going to increase every row by 6 stitches. And so to do that, we don't want to do 2 in every stitch because that would double the 12 to make 24. But what we want this row to be is 18. So what we'll do is we'll put our hook in the first stitch and just make 1 single crochet. and then from there we're going to go into the next stitch and do 2, which is an increase. So we're going to do 2 in the next stitch. Just like that. And then we're just going to continue that all the way around. So we're just going to do like 1 single crochet, then an increase, or then 1 single crochet and increase, and then that will go all the way back until we get back to our stitch marker. So I'm just going to continue that around with doing 1 single crochet and then the next stitch doing 2. So at the end of this row we should have 18 stitches. And for this ball that I'm making, I'm going to continue this type of pattern until I eventually get to where I'm doing 3 normal crochets and then an increase. So I'll continue to show you how to do that. So I'm just getting to the end of row 3, and I have 18 stitches right now. Oops, once I increase. Okay, so I should have 18 stitches now since it's row 3. And if you want to know how many stitches you should have, you can always look at a pattern. Usually the patterns will have the stitch count that you should have at the end of it. Okay, so I'm going to take my stitch marker out and put it back in that top stitch. And then now we're going to do 2 normal single crochets, and then the stitch after that we're going to do an increase. So you're going to put your hook in here, then just do a single crochet, and then the next stitch we're going to also just do a normal crochet. And then so that's 2 just single crochets, and then in the next stitch we're going to increase. So that's where we do the 2 stitches in 1 stitch. And we're also just going to repeat that pattern around. So it will repeat 1, 2, or like 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. So if that's how you'd like to think of it, is like doing, so in each stitch you're going to do 1, 1, 2. That's kind of the pattern we're doing. So I'm just going to continue that. So like I said before, in row 3 we had 18 stitches, and since every row we increase by 6 stitches, now we will have 24. Alright, there we go. So I just finished that row. So I'm going to grab my stitch marker, pull it out, and put it in this stitch here. Alright, so we're going to do 1 more row of increases before we start to go down. So as you can see, this circle has gotten a lot bigger since when we started. So we're just going to make it 1 row bigger and increase the stitch count by 6 again, and then from there we'll just continue doing 1 stitch in every round, and then after that we'll decrease, which is where we go smaller. So for this last round of increasing, we're going to do 3. So we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase. So you'll just normally single crochet 3 stitches. And then from there, in that 4th stitch, you're going to increase. Alright, and again we're just going to repeat that all around. So 3 normal single crochets. And then in the 4th one, increase. Alright, so I'm at my end of the row, and I'm just going to do my last increase here. So my last 2 single crochets into 1 stitch, and we're still going to keep the stitch marker here. So this is how big roughly the top of whatever you're making will be. So if you wanted whatever you're making a little bit bigger, then you just continue. You do like 4 single stitches and then a double, or like an increase. But for me, I'm just going to keep it here, and you can see it's kind of starting to curve a little bit downward. So what I like to do with this, I just like to kind of stretch this out a little bit. Not too much, you don't want to make your stitches look stretched out, but especially if you're crocheting tightly, it will help them to loosen up a little bit. And if you are a new crocheter, I do recommend that you crochet a little bit looser so you can see your stitches, but also try not to have a lot of gaping holes in your work. So I'm just going to put my stitch marker in here, and then I'm just going to single crochet in every stitch around. So our stitch count right now is 30, and it will stay 30 until we decrease. In some patterns, I know some of my patterns, what I'll do is I'll crochet one in every stitch around, and then when it gets to like the middle of it, I'll have you increase again. So yeah, just look out for that. Okay, my camera keeps stopping on me. So what I was saying is, let's say that you count your stitches and you're supposed to have 30, but you only have 29. It's totally okay to just do a random increase in there somewhere. Just as long as you have the right stitch count, it's totally fine. So yeah, if I just counted my stitches right now and I only had 29, I could put an increase right there. It shouldn't affect the pattern too much of how it turns out. So that's just a good tip for you. Alright, so I'm getting to the end of my row, and I'm going to stop recording for now, because all you're going to do is keep crocheting one in every stitch until we get a little bit lower. And I can tell you exactly how many rows if you just keep on watching. It should be like 4 or 5, maybe 6, and then I'll show you how to decrease. So just go ahead and keep single crocheting one in every stitch, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, so I ended up doing 5 rows of single crochets, and this is what it looks like. So it kind of looks like a little bowl almost. So from here I'm going to start decreasing, and it might look a little small, but the decreases will add just a little bit of length at the end, and also the way we stuff it will affect how it turns out in the end. So I'll show you how to do those decreases. So it's kind of the same thing that we did with our increases, but almost like the opposite. So with our stitch count. So what we're going to do is I'm going to single crochet 3 normally. So go 1, 2, and 3. And then from here we're going to decrease. And there's, just like how there's 2 ways to start crocheting, there's also 2 ways to decrease. So I'll show you both ways. First I want to show you the way that I like to do it. I'm sure you've noticed as you're crocheting there's 2 loops that you crochet through. So to do this is called the invisible decrease. So this is where you kind of go through and you find that first loop. So instead of going through both sides of the loop, you just go through the first one, and then you go to the next stitch over and you pick up that first stitch too. So you have 2 loops on your hook, or actually you have 3, but 2 from the 2 stitches. From here you single crochet like normal, so you yarn over and you pull through both of those loops, then single crochet, and then you yarn over and pull through 2. So that's the harder way. It's also harder to see what you're doing. So if you don't like that method, I'll show you the other method next. But first I'm going to get to that point. So I'm going to single crochet 3. Just single crochet 3 like normal. Okay, so I single crocheted 3. So now this is the slightly easier version. So what you do is you basically make 2 stitches and make them 1. So you don't complete the first stitch, and then the second stitch will complete the first stitch. So that probably doesn't make sense. So I'm going to just show you. So you put your hook into like the next stitch, then you yarn over and pull through 1, And then normally you would yarn over and pull through 2, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to put it through the next stitch and then yarn over, pull through that loop. So now we have 3 loops on our hook. So from there is you yarn over and you pull through all 3 of them. So this one's a little easier to see like what we're doing. So what we did is we made those 2 stitches into 1 stitch up here. And that's the same with the invisible decrease over here, is we made 2 stitches 1. So that's basically the whole point of decreasing, is to make it smaller. So where increasing we made 1 stitch into 2 stitches, with decreasing we make 2 stitches into 1 stitch. And this just makes it come together and make it smaller. But this decrease we did here, that's called single crochet 2 together. And then the other one is called the invisible decrease. And either one of these you can use as a decrease. So if your pattern just says to decrease, you can use either one and they turn out the same. And so while I'm using both techniques, you can use both if you want, if you're following along with me, or you can choose one or the other. What I usually do is I usually do the invisible decrease, and then on the last row I do single crochet 2 together, which I'll show you. That's usually what I do for my plushies because I think it looks best. The only downside I would say for the single crochet 2 together is that it does make it's a little more bumpy. Like if you're following along with me and you did that, you can maybe feel that it's a little like plushier. I don't know how to say it, but it's a little thicker than the other stitches, and you can see it more. See, if the single crochet 2 together, you can't even see that it's there, which can be a good and a bad thing. See, if you're trying to find where your last decrease is, it's since I do it a lot, I can kind of see where it is, but if you're not used to seeing where it is, it can be really hard to see. Just whatever you prefer and you want to do, just go for it. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this row, which I'll cut out. So just single crochet 3 normally, and then do whichever decrease you choose. Alright, I got to the end of the row. I just want to show you my decreasing for the last stitch. So you can take out your stitch marker. Just remember that you're doing a decrease. Sometimes I'll be crocheting and I forget, and I take out the stitch marker, and then I can't remember if that really was the last stitch or not. So just know where you are. So I'm just going to single crochet 2 together. Again, you can do whatever decreasing you want. Okay, so I'm going to leave my stitch marker out for another second because I'm going to show you how to put safety eyes in. So whenever I stop crocheting for some time, I usually pull my stitch out a little bit because you can see it pulls back and in. And if you're worried about it coming undone, like I'm not worried about it. It usually doesn't, but if you are really worried about it, you can put your stitch marker in the loop here. So no matter how tight you pull it, the stitch marker will won't undo it. The stitch marker will hold it for you. Okay, I'm going to take that out because I don't want it to hit the table and be loud. But I'm going to come over here, and I took these 2 bags out of my kit to work with. So if you ever buy a kit, this is what comes in it. So I'm going to come in here and get my safety eyes. And I'm also going to take this needle out for later. So this is where you like sew together. This can help you like sew together things, or yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take my eyes out. And you don't have to use safety eyes if you don't want to. That's totally fine. You can either not put eyes in it, or if you want, you can even grab like a piece of black yarn and make a few stitches, or like weave it around a couple stitches to make it look like eyes. So let's see, you can just find where you want it. And so there's 2 pieces here. So these are the eyes, and then these are called washers. So these are called washers, or they're called like backs. So you'll see in a second why we need these, and you don't see these in your actual plushie. So what I'm going to do is, if we turn it this way up, you can see all of your stitches, and some people like it to put it like in between rows, but I like to actually put it inside of a single crochet because I think it holds better, holds the eye, and it has less of a chance of falling out. That's just kind of my opinion, or what I found. So I'm going to flip it back up, and I'm just going to find where I want it. I'm just going to put it there. So you can just put it really anywhere that fits, anywhere you want it. If you want it like higher or lower, you can go for it. And I'm just going to kind of see which row I put that in, and then come over here, and I'll try here. And I'm going to put that one stitch over. So I'm just going to take it out, put it over. I think I like that. So there we go. And so what we do with the washers or the backs, that's what holds the eyes. So as you can see a second ago, I just pulled the eye out. And so obviously you don't want that in case you're giving it to someone and they might not know. And it'd just be really easy to fall out. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to go like inside of it. And you can see in here where it sticks out. So you're going to put the washer on it. So it's usually a little bit tight. It's supposed to be tight because that's what keeps the eye in place. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of snap this in place. And you can hear there's different levels of notches that you can put it in. And if you're not sure how tight you want it, you can come look. I think I'm going to do like one more click. There we go. And I like the look of that. Usually the look is pretty much the same unless you're doing it way too tight. So I'm going to do the same tightness on the other side. Alright, it cut on me again. But what I was saying is you don't have to fully stuff it yet. You just need to get some stuffing in there. And if it's bothering you, you can pull it out. Just as long as you put the stuffing in before you close it off, that's good. So this is enough stuffing that I want for now. I do think it's pretty squishy, so I'll put in some more later. But I'll do it when there's more room. So I'm going to put my stitch marker back in. And like I said, I think it was like a row ago, that this is almost like the opposite of increasing. It really is. So in our last increase row, we did 3 single crochets and then an increase. And that's kind of the same here. We did 3 normal single crochets and then we decreased. So we're going to continue that pattern, just going down instead of up. So now we're going to do 2 single crochets and then a decrease. So yep, we'll just do 2 single crochets. And then you can decrease whichever method you liked best. You can do. So I'm doing the invisible decrease. And then you can just continue this all the way around with doing 2 single crochets and then 2 stitches and then a decrease. And then I'll meet you back. Alright, so I'm back at the end of the row. I just did my last stitch and I'm putting my stitch marker in. And from here we only have 2 rows left. So after every row I like to just put a little bit more stuffing in. So I'll just grab a little bit and stuff it like that. And then I'll put probably the most stuffing in the next row. So as you can see, it's kind of coming in now, like this. And we're just going to continue that. So we only have 2 rows left. So yeah, we just finished our row of 2 single crochets, then a decrease. So now we're going to do 1 single crochet, then a decrease. And again, if it bothers you to work with the stuffing in there, I usually like to push my fingers down into it so it doesn't come up. But if that bothers you too much, you can take it out and put it in the last row. Just whatever you prefer. So I'm just going to continue this 1 single crochet, then decrease, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so I finished the second to last row here, and then now we're just on to the last row. So I'm just going to put a little bit more stuffing in there, and it's really not exact science of how much stuffing to put in, just kind of however you feel. So this is pretty squishy right now, like pretty limp. So I'm going to put some more in there. Then I think I'm just going to put one more piece in for good measure. And the way you stuff it really affects how your plushie turns out. So you can get your fingers in there, and like if you think that your ball or like whatever you're making is too long, if you think it's too long, whatever, you can get your fingers in there and push it sideways. Or if you think that your plushie isn't tall enough, then you can get your finger in there and push it up. So yeah, how you stuff it really affects the shape of it. Alright, so we're on to the last row now. And we're just going to do decreases in every stitch. And for the last row, I always like to do single crochet 2-togethers as the decrease. I think it looks better in the end. So I'm just going to start doing that. And here we go. This is what our little ball looks like. Okay, and if there's any more stuffing you want to put in there, now's the time to do it. But I think I like how it is. So how we finish our plushies. So if this is something that is going to be sewn, you're going to leave a longer tail. But I'm not sewing this together to anything, so I'm just going to cut it a few inches. You always want to cut things at least a few inches so that we can sew together this little hole that's left. So what you do is I get my fingers in the loop here, and I grab the yarn, pull it up, and pull it through like this. Okay, so now that that's finished, I'm going to grab my sewing needle, and if you want to use a crochet hook, you can use that too, but I always like using a needle. So I'm just going to thread it by putting the yarn through the little eye, like that. And then now I'm just going to weave the needle through the stitches, so I'm just going to put it like in one stitch and out the next, like that. And I'm just going to pull it. And I'm going to do that for every stitch around, so 2 more times. So I'll put it in this stitch, then out the next, and then I'll put it in the stitch after that and pull it through. Then as you can see, we've pretty much closed up that hole, but now we just need to secure it, because if you cut it right now, it will probably come undone. So we're going to, what I like to do, everyone does a little bit differently, but what I like to do is just kind of, like I'll just put in a stitch and I'll just come out on a random side, just to kind of secure it. And I'll just keep doing that until I run out of yarn. And if you cut a long tail, you don't have to do it until you run out of yarn, just do it a couple times. So I'll just put it in a stitch nearby. Just don't put it in the same stitch that you came out of. So I'm going to come over here. Then I'll do it one more time. So I'll put, oops. And if your yarn tail is too short, what I do is I put the needle in without the yarn. Oops. Without the yarn, and then I'll have it come up like this. And then what I'll do is I grab the yarn and put it through the eye of the needle like that, and then pull it through. And then this is too short to weave in again, so I'm just going to grab my scissors and cut it. Alright, you can pull out the little bits of fuzz that come out. And something I didn't mention is with all these little fuzzes I've collected throughout making this ball, I save these and I put them inside of different plushies. So I didn't do that for this one, but you can save these small pieces if you want and put them in your next project. So you can just pick out any little pieces of stuffing that come out, and as you can see, it's a little bumpy here from where I sewed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my needle in there and just kind of pull it around, just make sure that it's all good and it looks round. So here's the finished product. I hope this helped you out with whatever you're making, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Bye!